and it's Pixie. Certainly glad you could join me today. This is the second episode of How to Cure Writer's Block, a series where I talk about what helps me get past writer's block. And today I want to talk about patience versus perfectionism. First, I was just going to talk about perfectionism, but I think patience or impatience is a big part of perfectionism, because you want to make something super amazing and you want it to be perfect on the first try, and you would prefer if you were done before you even started. Now, don't get discouraged if you recognize yourself in this, because patience is actually a skill that you can learn, just like writing. I know this because I'm doing it. And while it's still an ongoing process, I have gotten a lot more patient since I started working on it. So if this is something you too need to work on, you can. You can change. And if you need to, you will, because you're gonna write the thing and you're gonna give it the time and the love that it needs. Actually, I say patience, but it might be more like stubbornness, because at least for me, it's like giving up completely just is not an option. And if I don't want to just give up and never write again, I have to reckon with the fact that I need time. I need to reckon with the fact that other people's journeys look different, and with the fact that I will write bad stuff, sometimes mediocre stuff, but never perfect stuff. Because, like, in a longer perspective, the other option is just to never write again and stop thinking about it and stop wanting it. And even when I feel super unmotivated and discouraged, I can't do that. So for me, it really helps to take a step back and be like, okay, but 50 years from now, when I look back on my life, am I gonna have to deal with the regret that I didn't even try? Like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Another thing about perfectionism is that you tend to keep changing the definition of what perfect is, so you can never actually reach it. It's not a constructive goal. Like, for example, if you set a goal like write 2,500 words a week, perfection is more an impossible standard. And I think that, like, striving forward is a good thing, but sometimes it can also be really helpful to kind of stop and look at your own development. Like, compare where you are now to where you were when you started writing, and draw courage and motivation from how you've grown. And, like, I think this perspective of time is really important to grow your patience skill. Like, because it not only helps you see your accomplishments, but also it really helps if you view a piece of writing that you're not happy with as one stretch of a journey, rather than some kind of final proof that you weren't meant to be a writer, which is the way I used to view my failures. But then I had to be like, well, is this really how this is gonna go down? Like, is this gonna end because I was unhappy with a piece or got rejected? Like, no. And speaking of, like, if you were meant to be a writer or not, it's a really absurd mindset, but it comes from the, like, mystification, but it comes from the mystification of writing, and I think all creative work, that it's supposed to be like gifted from above and not something you work hard at. But I feel that topic could get its own video. So let me just paraphrase Yoda and say, either you're right or you don't. There's no meant. Like I touched on, perfectionism can also be seen as a good thing if it spurs you to improve your skills. But what I'm talking about today is more when it becomes destructive and stops you from even trying because you can't make it perfect. Like I don't know about you, but I personally am amazing at making up reasons for not even trying to do something I might fail at. Like even now, when I've been consciously working against this for years, I sometimes have little like arguments with myself before I try to do something new. But trying is super, super important. And I'm gonna use an example from my journey with learning to draw better. So I try to do gesture drawings fairly often, where you get a random pose of a human person and you try to draw it in like a really short time, like 30 seconds to a minute to like a few minutes. And sometimes the like randomizing tools that I use for this will give me a pose that makes me go like, oh gosh, this is impossible. I can't do this. But whenever I actually try, even though it usually looks really bad, it's never as impossible as I thought. Like, and I think that's super, super important because most things, like I would say almost everything, is less impossible than it can seem. So I really think that if you feel discouraged, it can be a really awesome thing to try something completely new, especially something that you're a bit scared of doing, like submitting a piece of writing to a literary magazine and get rejected, or draw a tractor, or write something for yourself in a form you've never written in before, like maybe a sonnet or something. So that would be my advice to you, because it's a really awesome feeling when you think that something is impossible and that you can't do it, and then like when it turns out bad, it's still like, yeah, but it turned out, like at least you did something. And this whole thing about patience versus perfectionism is, I think, about being gentle with yourself in your learning, like your learning process. You should look at your first try at something and say, this is one step closer to where I want to be, and it's a lot better than not making anything at all. In all my sketchbooks, I write the phrase progress, not perfection, and I think that's really important for me to remember. And if you're watching this video, maybe you could do with remembering it too. I just want to tell you this. You can write the thing. You can do it. And every attempt that you make at it is a super valuable experience. And your story and your creative process is worth the time and the effort. I promise you. I hope this was helpful, and I'll be back soon with the next video in the series. If you don't want to miss it, I suggest clicking subscribe, which I think is on this side somewhere, and maybe even the notification bell. I would also really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up or a comment if you enjoyed this. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Until then, take care of yourself, and remember to have fun and make stuff.